One of the most common things we hear about is how do I find good people? We're going to talk about finding talent today on the Kawartha Small Business Podcast. We have business conversations for the Kawartha commute. I'm Brian Rump.
And I'm Matt Garrity from Matty G Digital.
All right, Matt, this episode is sponsored by Starting Point Digital Marketing. You know you need to be doing digital marketing, but you seem to never have the time to do it right. Your business deserves to have good marketing that's quick, easy, and inexpensive. Starting Point Digital Marketing is designed just for you and provides intentionally simple digital marketing. Head over to startingpointdigitalmarketing.ca to get started now. So, Matt, how do you find talent?
Good question, Brian. I have always been a huge supporter of connecting with my connections. That sounds lame, but reaching out to the people that I know. And I will immediately say I'm not on social media or going through my phone and begging people, because I don't appreciate that when I see other people doing that for help. But I will reach out to certain people strategically. I've done it to you in the past. Hey, do you know someone that does this? Or might be good at this, which might be something we get into. But I'm a huge supporter of reaching out to the people you know within that field, or just kind of seeing like where those sort of conversations go.
Yeah, I think networking is the biggest thing.
That's a word that makes sense that I should have used.
Yeah, which is a good one. But I mean, that means different things to different people. Often, so many people get hired because of that. And it's not always the formal networking. It's the someone knows somebody and, it sounds like, you're a fit or they want to talk to you. There's kind of it's fascinating in small business. People are always complaining they can't find talent. And sometimes they're not even explicitly looking for that talent. Sometimes they're not even talking about, what they might need, when they might need it. But often when you hear of people who find good people, the story is just like what you told me. It's like, hey, do you know someone who does this? And then they meet the right person. They talk to them. There's usually never a perfect time to hire somebody in a growing business, but you get that right fit and you bring them on and test them out, and it works out that way. So, I think in general, networking is one of those big ways you find it. You have to kind of always be looking for what you need.
Yeah, absolutely. And we started, before this podcast started, by me saying, let's talk about this because this is going to be really positive, and now I'm going to take it really negatively.
Okay. All right. Sounds like fun to me.
I do not take issue with what you said, but something that I hear a lot too, which is it's so hard to find good talent or good people.
Yeah.
I think that's bogus. I think that usually is not an inexperienced thing, because I've heard it from people that are extremely experienced business owners, but I think it comes from a expectation side of things, and possibly not really knowing and understanding how to hire people. Like they don't have the background of actually going through a legitimate process to hire someone. And usually it's an expectation thing. You have to it is an expectation thing.
Yeah. I think definitely you have to know what to expect. How to hire, how to define what you're looking for. I don't know if I've told you this story, but I have a term that I used and for a while had a Twitter troll account by the same name called Wishonomics. So I call Wishonomics sort of the economics of wishing, and just wishing things worked differently than they actually do. And I was working on a project. It was very stressful. I was losing some sleep. And this term came to me in the middle of the night, and I literally bolted upright and was like, Wishonomics. And I was staying at actually my friend's house at the time. And I remember this because I immediately wrote it down. I had to find an old envelope on his shelf and like write down Wishonomics. But it was based on a company. They were about to fire somebody because they didn't have skills that they weren't hired to have and weren't in their job description.
Exactly.
And really, they were asking somebody to do something that wasn't part of their job, and they were blaming them for just not magically knowing how to do that. And I think it really helped me dive into on that level. A lot of times people will hire the wrong skill for the wrong job. They won't define what they need. They'll try to split jobs up and hire somebody to do 3 jobs that maybe they don't have the skills for one of them. Or I hear often, it's really like, how come I can't find somebody with a lot of experience, a lot of skills, can do all these things for me, and will work for minimum wage part-time when I need them?
Exactly. Like, yeah.
That doesn't work.
No, that person doesn't want, if they're extremely experienced, they don't want to work part-time. Probably, we're generalizing, but like they probably don't want to work part-time. They probably don't want to work for minimum wage. If they're so amazing at what they're doing, they're probably trying to do something on their own even. And like, and like push their career forward. They don't want to start at minimum wage.
Yeah, definitely. So you need to have a realistic idea of, where your business is, what it actually needs. And partly there's, the talent could be a bit of a, we've talked before about who, not how. You might want somebody who will work minimum wage full time and manage your store, but also do all of your, say, marketing. Whereas maybe the best thing to do is hire someone else who's an expert in marketing, who can, do in 10 hours or, do in 1 hour what you could do in 10 hours, and just have that other person solely focused on sales in your store, and hire someone who's good just at that. So a lot of it is that really knowing exactly what you need and finding that fit for, for that job and that focus, and not trying to sort of make somebody else fit that role.
Yeah, absolutely. And I've had something like this happen recently, where we were part of a process to hire someone, and we hired the person part-time with, I think, X amount of hours and pretty broad expectations. And then the role kind of expired. So we were now looking at another person to fill that role. And the conversation came up, well, we need this person to do more. We need them to be part-time, X amount of hours. We need them to come into the office, which I don't think is necessary. They need to be able to come into the office so they can get the feel of what's going on down here. And they need to be like minimum wage, like we're paying them peanuts. And we don't want to tell them exactly what to do. We want them to have their own initiative to go out and do things and figure things out. And I was just like, this is ridiculous. Like this is not management. It sounds like you're hiring a full-time person on salary to take over a management role.
Yeah.
Student type of thing.
And that goes back to, that's sort of another, who are you hiring? So I have written on my notes here, sort of, are you hiring labor or are you hiring a critical thinker? And again, back to the design of your business. So, if we look at just the core strategy of your business, and this is, again, another whole topic for another time, but just briefly, you can really choose between competing on something like cost or competing on differentiation. So depending on your business, you're either going to, if you're competing on cost, you need to have really tight systems set up. You need to have processes. You're probably hiring people that are less expensive, but you're telling them exactly what to do. If you're competing on being different and adding value, then you probably don't have as tight of systems. You're going to hire people who have to figure things out on their own, but that's going to be more expensive. So what most businesses do is they're sort of stuck in the middle of that. So they want someone to be cheap and inexpensive and also design all of their processes and figure that out themselves. So it really gets back to, what are you doing? If you have a well laid out process, you can train somebody. You can hire someone with the right attitude who maybe you can get at a lower price and teach them exactly what to do. But if you're trying to bring in sort of the savior for minimum wage, that's not going to work. And then you're just going to be out complaining to people that you can't find good people.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that has a lot to do with it, especially when you are thinking about talking about, like, what are you actually hiring someone for? Like, I have written down here, like you said, someone that's a little bit more behind the scenes, or someone that's more client facing. So behind the scenes, you can work with them. They're not going to maybe mess something up that's so critical. Someone client facing, meaning like they're going to be talking to your consumer more often and engaging and representing them more. You probably need a little bit more experience with that.
Yeah. And it's also just on that note too, like looking at types of personalities. There are people who are well suited to sort of behind the scenes. I call them like career clerks, the Corporal Radar O'Reilly types who just know what to do and do all the like bits and pieces. There's other people, and often the client facing salespeople, they're not going to like processes as much. They're going to be rebels at heart. So you have to manage that. But if you try to say, hire somebody who has a great attitude for sales and is that rebel at heart, and then try to say, well, maybe also do all of our virtual assistant and detail work, like it's not going to work out. And you really need to be able to identify what is the skills and personality needed in that role and not jam somebody else into it.
Yeah. And I think an HR manager is probably going to hate this, but you've said it twice now. And I fully agree that it starts with finding someone with a good attitude and like certain characteristics. The skills will come. You can teach people skills. You need people that have a good attitude, that are willing to work with you, buy into what you're selling, and push sort of how we're going from there. I would argue that most of the time that's fair. In certain cases, it doesn't. A lot of professional services, you can't hire someone inexperienced that has a good attitude to be a lawyer or a doctor, like an HVAC technician or something. For most retail, again, generalizing, you could hire anyone as long as they have a good attitude and they're comfortable talking to people, probably.
Yeah, you want the attitude's that number one thing. And it's also just picking up on something you said about understanding the attitude you're looking for. So back to your business design, what mission are you on? What is that attitude? Do you want people who are there to learn more and grow and adapt new skills? Or do you just want somebody to be grumpy and execute your processes? So you really, need to invite that person onto your mission, right? Like, hey, come join us on this mission. Here's what we're doing. We're going to teach you how to do stuff along the way. But if you don't really know what that is, then it's going to be hard to find good people as well, because you don't even know what you're looking for.
Yeah, and you probably don't know how to train them to get those certain skills. And that's how I handle everything when I'm working with someone. So I look for a good attitude, but the thing I realized too is I don't know how to train anyone. I have no idea how to do that. I'm not a teacher. I cannot instruct. I don't have pages and pages of process for people to read. I don't know how to train someone. Can I hire someone to do that for me? Maybe one day, I've thought of. But I don't know how to do that. Now, do I want to work with people with experience? Yes, in certain cases, like you said, because that's what I, as Matty G Digital, is selling. I'm excelling customization, I'm selling strategy, etc. So like I need to pay a bit more than minimum wage and get people that are experienced to provide good work. So I don't need to tell them what to do along the way. I give them like, this is my methodology. Here's my process. This is kind of how I handle things. But it goes back to the who, not how thing. Like, I've hired you because you're good at this. I don't tell you how to be good at it. I already know you're good at it. So a lot of the time I'm hiring on experience because I know I can't train someone. When I do know I have to train someone, I completely shift my mindset. And I'm now, again, I can't train, so now I'm a mentor. And it's different than training, because with a mentor, you recognize that you have like someone with good attitude and someone like maybe positive. They've got a little bit of a skill set, maybe nothing, which I've worked with, and they just have like an interest in this. Then you're like looking for someone to, like, you're mentoring them and you're trying to grow someone. You see that they have like certain characteristics that you like and you want to help them evolve and go on to great things, which also means you're kind of mentoring people to surpass you, which is honestly, it's the goal. And I know people would not be happy with that, which I think is maybe one of the issues that goes back to this whole, like, circles back to this conversation, is like most people hire people because they want them to get in line and they want them to be soldiers. And that's when you train people. You train people to be soldiers at your store, at your business. And that's fine. There's a time and a place for that. Soldiers need to exist in business. But I've always taken the approach that, again, I don't know how to train someone. I'm going to mentor someone with a great attitude and like hopefully evolve them. They get the urge to be an entrepreneur and try to go on to good and greater things. And I'm not joking. I say this to like every person I've started mentoring the last couple of years, is I hope that they go on to start their own business and they get too big for me and they can't take work for me anymore. And they just look back and think, man, that Matt sure was nice. And like leave a nice legacy with them.
Yeah, I like that. I mean, and that's a good, vision to have. I like the idea of hiring people that are better than you. Like, I remember a colleague of mine and I were on a hiring team, and we interviewed somebody. And when the person left, my colleague said to me, she's like, "Oh, that person's going to be our boss in 2 years." Like, they were just so smart and knew everything. So we were like, yeah, let's hire them right now. Like, that's awesome. Like, to do. I see it as a badge of honor. I also have hired people who have excelled way over me really quickly. And that's awesome. Like, that just means you're good at finding people. Like, you want to do that. Depending on your business, if you're a retail business, sometimes, retail sort of has a reputation of eating the young, and it's young people who do it for a while, but find the best person, make them awesome for a few years, and then they move on to something else, if that's your strategy. If you're trying to get somebody who's going to work with you for 20 years, you've got to set up a situation where that makes sense for them as well. One of the other problems people don't always realize is just things like the market forces at play. You have to have attractive compensation. If you want to hire people who you want to be able to live indoors and eat, then they need to be able to make enough money to pay for those things. You might get really lucky and have someone working part-time minimum wage who's living in their parents' basement. But if they want to live out on their own, it's not possible for them to work for you at that price. So you have to make sure your business is designed so that you can, compensate staff fairly, if that's what your strategy is. At least a living wage. You want to be able to do that and have good, predictable work conditions. Lots of people I know, they love the idea of the sort of part-time retired person who maybe has a pension and they can come in and work and do a really good job. And that's great, but really you're their hobby. You're helping them keep busy a little bit. They might not be invested in your long-term success. They're just looking for something to keep busy at. So you have to make sure that, if that's what you want, that's great. And it might be good for a short period of time, but it's not predictably replaceable. You can't always find that person, or the person who's, their spouse has a really great job, so they just need to work part-time and the wage doesn't really matter. Again, that's a good situation to have, but you can't predictably replace that. Where you can predictably replace is knowing exactly, what you want, being on the lookout for that person, and having a working conditions and wage that makes sense for that industry.
It's interesting. I'm just more so thinking about retail now and the experience. And you said even it's young and everything. With retail, like there's so much turnover because it's usually younger people that started it. And then it eats its young and they go off and do their own thing. Like retailers don't have the resources, time, maybe more than anything, to train these people as good as they want them to, because by the time they get to that point, that employee's off to the next thing.
And again,
to be hiring someone with a little bit of experience right out of the gate, because that's what they complain about most is I can't find anyone. And then if they get in here, they're gone. And like the turnover is because they're probably the youngest people they can get that are cheap. And then those people move on and they go do other things. Like you're going to have to compromise somewhere. You're going to have to compromise on what you're paying the person. Age. I know we're probably getting into like HR issues, but we're not actually hiring anyone right now, so we can't get ourselves in trouble. But like you need to be thinking of these things specifically.
Yeah, and that's again goes back to strategy and position in the market. One example, and again with retail, preying on young people, you'll see, and I've hired people who are like, they're 22 years old and they've been managing like a store in the mall for 2 years at like, $18 an hour, which is better than minimum wage, but it's, not amazing. And they're doing all these things. And then, they want more money and the company's like, nope. So they leave. And then they always have a pipeline of new people coming up, partly because, that's just how that industry works. Other stores, if you need good training, you want great service, you need to have a path where people make more and you can retain them a long time. Somebody pointed out to me one thing that was really interesting. I used to work for Home Hardware as a teenager, and someone said, well, with Home Hardware, whenever you go in, you always find like a old guy with glasses on who can help you out. So, you have to structure your store to be able to hire those people, pay them appropriately for their advice. But part of your whole positioning is, you go to a big box store. Yeah, maybe some things are going to be cheaper, but we're probably not really going to help you. But if you go to Home Hardware, you're going to get the old guy or, girl with glasses who's going to help you out. I worked at the one in Sterling, Ontario, and my colleague Mary there, who's been there forever, sort of grew up on a farm and, knew more about plumbing and plumbing parts and electrical parts than probably anybody I know. So it's like, you're going to go and you're going to get that advice there. So that's, part of your deal and strategy. And, she's not working for minimum wage part-time. Like that has to be a full-time viable job for her. So the business has to be structured properly, to get that.
It's a great point. Like if you think about a couple of the big box hardware stores or like superstore type of places, the big Canadian one that I won't name, but you go in there and you need something electrical, etc. You're talking to a kid that's half your age and they don't know what you're talking about. They're like, oh, the plumbing aisle's down there.
Yeah.
A completely different situation. Yeah, you find someone that's usually experienced. They're quite helpful. They'll walk you over the last few questions. They'll point out exactly what you need.
Yeah. It's and that's, again, knowing what your strategy is and what you need and who to look for. So if you're that Home Hardware, you're probably a balance between, old people who know everything and young people to, stock shelves, carry stuff, help out a bit. Maybe they know stuff as well, or you're teaching them. When I worked at Home Hardware, I knew more about plumbing and parts and all of that stuff. Now I think I forgot it all. But I remember in university, I was able to do plumbing repairs and things like that from just being around people who knew what they were doing. So you can train it a little bit, but again, I wasn't the expert, but we had the expert there.
Right, for sure. What are some other places that you would recommend, like locally, for finding talent?
So finding talent, this is another interesting one. Again, it all depends on your business a little bit, but where are you looking? And that superstar is probably working somewhere else. So you have to go find them and steal them. And that seems bad, but I think, it's a great source is other people's businesses sometimes, especially if you know exactly what you need, if you pay a little bit better, go find them. There's a great, I forget where I saw this ad. It might have been in Belleville where my parents live, but it was a car dealership looking for new salespeople. And their ad was basically something like, you have a background in hospitality. We teach you how to sell cars. So they knew exactly what they wanted. So they would patrol the, restaurants, find the absolute best servers and people, and then basically convince them to come be car salesmen instead. And that was where they looked for talent. So I remember when I worked for the bank in Fenelon Falls, the grocery store was a great spot for spotting people who might be really good at being tellers someday. So they often had the best like high school students or people who hung around and would do some good customer service type jobs. And it was like, if we're ever hiring, like I'm going to go talk to these people to like level them up a little bit. And that was a place where, turnover was regular. So, you're maybe not going to get in fights with other owners, but it happens all the time. People switch employers. So sometimes you just got to go find that person somewhere else because they might not be looking. Job boards can be good. But again, it's really hard to find the right person. So,
yeah, I think Lindsay Advocate has a job board. My guess is Fleming College. I thought I heard something last year. Fleming College started doing something like that. You might know better than me. I think VCCS has options like that locally.
Yeah, VCCS is great. I'm the president of the board of directors there. I have nothing to do with the operations, but I know they have, job boards. They work with employers sometimes, or not sometimes, all the time to connect people. In my former role, I have two people now who are sort of superstars in the industry, came through VCCS. So again, that networking, sometimes it's, having those people having an ear open for, spotting the talent that they know you need for your business.
Yeah, for sure. And I was going to drop some online ones, but forget that. Let's just focus on.
Yeah, no, it's crazy. And it's also like big ones like Indeed. I've just been through a hiring process using Indeed and you get like 200 applications. And it's not the best strategy. It's very sort of reactive. You're kind of hoping just to get lucky.
Sure.
Sometimes. Yeah. So with a business, and that can be just part of like, let's try to get lucky and find the right person, but knowing that you might not. But if you really want to find that right person, you got to go out and get them somewhere.
Interesting.
Yeah. It also helps having great marketing as well. Not to plug you too much, but people want to work for good businesses that appear to be profitable, clearly know what they're doing, are on a mission. So if you have, good marketing as part of a good recruitment strategy as well.
Yeah, all part of your branding and your marketing and making sure people know about you. And I will say, like, I've been really, I don't want to say lucky because we can talk about, I think, the negativity of luck, but I've been very fortunate by having a lot of people have reached out to me to like just to introduce themselves as people that are new to marketing, etc. And I don't do it as much as when I first started, but I'd say of like maybe the 12 people in the last year or two that have reached out, I've worked with like 10 of them based on nothing other than the fact that they reached out to me. And I recognize like this is a good opportunity for them. Let's see what they've got. They seem like they've got a good attitude. They've shown the initiative to reach out. And like I said, I can mentor them from here. So it's all about that good attitude and initiative. And again, having the ability to put yourself out there to show like, hey, you say it to me all the time when we're talking about businesses, where it's like, how does someone know that they exist if they're not telling people that they exist? And it's the same thing if we're recruiting people, whether we're doing that internally or externally, it's all part of your branding and marketing.
Yeah, awesome. Well, that sounds like an episode to me, Matt. So if you want to know more about finding talent, if you want us to help you sort of create the design of your business to find that good talent, we would love to help you. You can email us at setitup@kawarthasmallbusinesspodcast.ca.